So we'll just go ahead and get started. I know we got some things to do. Our goal is to be out here within an hour. So we appreciate the candidates for coming. We have a pretty good show-up, it looks like. We just have Mr. Schuler, Mr. Miller, and Mr. Peterson absent. Doug, I emailed him. He's out of town. We called him, invited him. We also emailed him. So he emailed some responses back that I'll read on just certain questions. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming. Hopefully you guys will, as you hear the candidates and listen to them, hopefully you'll go communicate their response to your circle of influence and help bring up the information level of some of our citizens here. I also want to thank the candidates for running. I hope that we also show class to them. Anyone who's run for office knows how difficult it is to put yourself out there and express your views. So I just hope there's a little bit of respect there. So thank you very much, candidates. If we can just go ahead and start here with Mr. Pratt. Well, let me just tell you the format for tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to start with we're going to do a 30-second bio for each candidate. So I want every candidate to stand up and give 30 seconds about yourself. After you tell about yourself, I want you to then talk about the 2 largest issues facing City Hall. Don't necessarily need to go into much detail, or as much detail as you want, but we want it to be a little bit quicker so we can move through plenty of questions. So a 30-second bio and then 2 issues facing City Hall. Mr. Pratt, go.
Lovely. My name is Gary Pratt. My background is that I've been married, my wife tells me 44 years, and I lost count. I have 5 children, 25 grandchildren. I've managed, owned, or run major corporations, over 10 of them. And so when I came to Syracuse, my first thing I stuck my nose into was the Planning Commission. I've been on the Planning Commission for over 3 years, so I know land use, I know Syracuse. A couple of the main issues that Syracuse faces is budgeting, how to make our tax dollar go farther, and some of that has to do with infrastructure, which would be probably the second most important thing. I think the third thing is, as we've all experienced, is probably communication within the city and within our sister cities and within the media.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Daly. I was raised here in Syracuse, attended an alumnus of Syracuse Elementary School. For 3 of you could make probably that statement too. I was raised in this little town. I love it. I love everything about it. When I finished my dental education, and I'm sorry I'm here in my spit clothes because I haven't had a chance to go home yet today. I opened the first medical clinic in Syracuse in 1982. We wanted to settle rural, and we did, and it changed. I think that the biggest issue facing Syracuse right now is how we're perceived within the influence of Syracuse. I think that there has been a lot of infighting and a lot of discord that has been perpetuated by current leadership.
Just one more second.
By current leadership. I think that's the number one issue, and secondly, sustained economic growth would be my second.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm Alan Lowry, and I've lived in Syracuse about 7 years. I've got a lovely wife and 3 daughters that I live here with me. I've served in the U.S. military, and I'm happy to defend our Constitution, and to actually put myself there to defend it in the JAG as a legal specialist for 8 years. Some of the things that I think are challenges that we're facing in the city is, number one, we've got an imposed road that's going to be coming through here. We need to make sure that we're planning for that, and we're getting things in place for the effects that it will have on us. I think that being fiscally conservative is something else that we absolutely need to make sure that we're doing. And then lastly, protecting our own land use and the abilities that we have to be able to do what we need to make sure that we do those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Travis Waller. I've been a resident of Syracuse for 13 years. Married, my beautiful wife Kathy there in the audience, and I have 2 children, both of which attend school here in Syracuse. I graduated from Arizona State University, go Sun Devils, and I'm happy that the Utes are now in the pack. So we're no longer in last place. Some of the things that concern me is the lack of cooperation amongst the council and the city leadership. I think they could be doing a better job that way. They need to learn how to compromise. Not everybody can win. So I think there's some polarization there. Second thing is budget. And my time is up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Duncan. A little bit about me. I have a wife and 6 children. They're all here and hopefully they behave. I grew up in a small town in Idaho. I attended Brigham Young University for my undergraduate work. I also attended BYU Law School where I graduated with honors. Perhaps one of the things that was most important to me when I was at BYU Law School, so you understand where I worked with Professor Wilkins, who was the cause for constitutional law and liberty around the world, and I helped do research with him in promoting family values to the United Nations. And so my roots go deep in traditional values and in the Constitution. I was privileged to work with Professor Wilkins in that project. So that's a little bit about me. I've been involved in conservative values for years now, and certainly Syracuse needs more of that as well. What do I think are the 2 most important issues? I think 2 most important issues are spending habits and the desire by many people in our city who are in leadership to tax. And I think the other issue that's important is planning our city for the future. Syracuse is beautiful because of the general plan, and Syracuse will stay the Syracuse we want it to be if we follow the general plan. Otherwise, we lose what makes Syracuse great.
My name is Terry Palmer. By the way, I'm an Arizona Wildcat. I've lived in Syracuse for 37 years, but I know that that's not very important. I've had my own business here for the last 11 years. I've owned that same business for 32 years. I still have the other building in Roy. I believe that experience is important for the next mayor in this community. The 2 situations that are of concern here in the city happen to be concerns of the citizens that I've been asking. And they have said the #1 concern is the civility between the council and the mayor. And I do believe it'd be nice to be in the newspaper for positive things instead of negative. I would add to that opening up all these businesses over here, these vacant buildings, is very important to Syracuse so that we can bring in the revenues from there. Thank you.
I'm Travis Jackson. I've lived in Syracuse for almost 2 years. Went to Weber State, got a bachelor's degree in automotive technology. I'm your average Joe. I'm not a politician. I grew up in Clearfield, and 2 of the biggest issues I think we have are the budget. We need to stick on budget and keep it going. It's getting better. And like Terry Palmer said here, the businesses, we have all these empty business spots. We need to fill them and get that revenue coming back to our city.
Thank you very much. I have 7 questions that I've gone ahead and outlined. I'm going to ask, I think, 3 or 4 per question, so you're not all going to get the same question. While I'm going through this, I also want each one of you to think of a question that you might pose to another candidate, and at the end we'll have that opportunity given time. Hopefully we'll have time. If not, we'll have to defer that. So just think maybe a question for another candidate. Okay, question number 1, and please limit your answers to maybe 30 seconds on this so we can go through it. Question number 1. In the event of another sharp decline in city revenue, how would you propose to bridge the funding gap for infrastructure? And please be specific. Mr. Waller, question for you.
Well, I think the point's been made. We have a lot of empty businesses sitting over here. It'd be nice if they were filled up and patronized by the citizens of Syracuse, thereby creating a tax base that we could utilize to perhaps develop a rainy day fund, so when times are tough, we have something to fall back on. Stop unnecessary spending. Look for areas where we can cut back with minimal pain, and consider outsourcing certain projects in the city, even parts of the infrastructure. Okay. And then also, one of the things that I see in the business world, especially within my own company, is cross-training individuals, having dual responsibilities. And I think that would help us tremendously.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jackson, in the event of another sharp decline in city revenue, how would you propose to bridge the funding gap for infrastructure?
Going along the lines of what Mr. Travis said, build up our rainy day fund now. I've heard it's already gone from 5% up to 20%. Let's figure ways out to get these businesses filled up. Well, they're just sitting there empty. They got to be making money to somebody, whether it's to the city, whether it's to whoever owns the property. We still need taxes from that. Again, find ways in our budget to cut spending, whether it's outsourcing. You know, I'm sorry to say I'm saying the exact same things that Mr. Travis is saying, but they're all true and they're all right. They're all things that can be done. Trim our budget now to help build our rainy day fund. There's things that we can trim out to make that happen.
Thank you. And then Mr. Gailey, same question.
I've been the managing director of SBOS for the last 3 years in Syracuse, and one of our concerns has been the business death in Syracuse. I think the thing we need to do is diversify. If we're hanging all of our rabbits in commercial retail sales, those things are the very first things that begin to wane when the economy goes south. So I think we need to find a way to diversify the resources that are coming in from the city and those revenue streams. We need to look at different methods of funding the city involving sales tax. You know, I'm a business owner. I pay a lot more sales tax as a businessman than I do as a private citizen. So those buildings are all being taxed already.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to question number 2. The state of Utah has fewer employees today than it did in the year 2000, yet the population has increased. City Hall has been very quick to compliment themselves on efficiencies, yet many departments have grown during a recessionary period. Recent discussions have been centered around appropriate staffing levels, parentheses, the growth of government, and with the city most recently hiring a city attorney at a pay scale higher than the previous. What are your thoughts on appropriate staffing levels, hiring practices, and current accelerated growth of City Hall? Mr. Duncan.
Okay. Well, and that's not an easy question, because the reality is one of the things I want to see happening, and I've been talking about this for some time, and I think Mr. Lowry talked about this at our last meeting candidates night. One of the things I like to see, we do this in business, we do this in our own homes. I want to see an independent efficiency audit come in, because oftentimes when we're looking at our own finances and we're taking a look at what's going on, we need somebody else to come in and point out what's going on. I think there are ways that we can save the city. I don't want to jump to any conclusion because we haven't done that yet. And I don't think that the current administration is willing to cooperate with the city council on that. With the right kind of mayor in office where we can have books open. I know that a couple of candidates have guaranteed, the 2 that are here tonight have guaranteed that they will work with the city council on opening up the books so that we can take a look at that and figure that out. And so at the end of the day, I do think there's efficiencies that we can do. And you know, when you talk about taxation and raising revenues, you know, it's not about a revenue problem, it's oftentimes about a revenue problem. So I really want to go through, take a look at where we can make our cuts, get a real independent look and an eye, and before we make any decisions of firing people or downsizing staff, let's take a look at where the professionals are saying we can make this happen, and then make a decision as the city council and get it done.
Thank you. Aaron, do you need me to repeat the question, or are you good?
No, I'm good. Well, I personally would have preferred that we outsource the attorney. I do understand that we're probably, you know, with salary and benefits, well over $100,000, way over that. So personally, I would have been in favor of that. However, we've hired the attorney, and so we're there. If there's a downturn and so forth, we have to look at those type of things that would happen, which would indicate that, you know, salaries may be affected, employees may be affected. As an owner of a business, if you have a downturn, the worst thing you can do is continue spending at the same rate that you're receiving money. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Mr. Rogers.
You know, I've worked in business for about 18 years, and one of the responsibilities I had was to serve on an acquisition team 2 times where we went out to actually fund businesses and identified some of the areas that we could make cuts. In most instances, the biggest issue they had was retaining good qualified individuals. And so that's probably the first place that I would go, make sure we were able to retain individuals that have the best qualifications. Secondly is being an efficiency expert is to look at efficiencies within the city. And a lot of times when we look at the federal government, they've outsourced a lot of things. it ended up costing more than it did just having individuals that would run those specific departments. And so we really have to take a look at those two things independently and making sure that if we do outsource, that it makes sense financially, and that if we don't, that the individuals that we do keep are most qualified, and that they are the ones that will be able to perform and do the responsibilities that we need to. So looking at efficiencies, identifying areas where we can cut if necessary, or simply do some synergies and combine some things to help out that one.
Thank you.
Try to be as specific as you can in your responses. Mr. Pratt, same question.
Thank you. All right, well, first of all, let's talk about the retail zones. They were built when the things were really booming. Land was expensive, building the buildings was expensive, and as a person who used to own retail establishments, your rent is always based on what your costs are, and you pass that on to your tenants, and the tenants have to pay the rent. They have to figure out in their business plan if they can make it or not. All these businesses, I talked to many of them, had good business plans, and the reason they failed is because the volume that they were expecting didn't occur, which has to do with how people through the front door, and they just couldn't do it. And so it's not because Syracuse is a failure, it's because rents are high here because the facilities were built when things were expensive. Things are cheaper now, so we'd like to see things done a lot quicker. As far as saving money, look, the city takes in plenty of money. They just passed out a $150,000 bonus. Their rainy day fund went from 5% to 20%. We're taking in plenty of money. And if we need to save money, there's other ways of doing it. I brought up outsourcing, and I agree with that.
Thank you. Next question. What are your thoughts on government transparency as it relates to making decisions for the city? City council members and planning commissioners, this is a subsequent question for you. Have you ever corroborated or discussed or made pacts with other members offline? Mr. Jackson.
Greg, before they answer that, since I've taken it upon myself to do the time, can I bump it up to, let's say, a minute and a half even, to give you guys a little bit more time? Obviously, we want to keep it moving. I like what he's doing.
Sure.
Is that all right?
I think that's great.
Thank you.
Hey, ask that question.
Yeah.
The latter part of that question there.
Okay. What are your thoughts on transparency as it relates to making decisions for the city? Those members who are city council members or former planning commissioners, have you corroborated or had discussions and made pacts with other members offline in the past? Mr. Jackson.
I have to say, our government needs to be completely transparent. This is your government. You guys are paying, well, not me yet, hopefully I will be, but you'll be paying us to run the city for you. It's your taxes paying us. You should have to say what needs to be going on, not backroom deals or, hey, well, let's just got this couple set of people in here, we're going to do everything and not really care, bring in businesses that don't need to be coming in here. It's your government, it's your city, it's our city. It's not Syracuse's city, it's the citizen city. And I haven't been on anything to make backroom deals yet, and I doubt I ever will. That's not right, and it shouldn't happen.
Thank you. Councilmember Dunn.
Well, I am on it, so I'll answer that second part here in a minute, but transparency in our city is awful. Transparency in our city is awful. And I would just tell you something, there's been a lot of criticism of this city council for having contention with this administration, and I'll be on the record to say that I've been a part of that contention, but it's been a part of calling out the administration on their transparency issues. It's pretty bad in the city when the Standard Examiner's editorial board writes a piece slamming our administration from hiding stuff from the city council and calling them out for doing it illegally. That's got to stop, and that's going to begin with the new administration. And both of these men that are here tonight are committed to transparency. So is there a transparency problem in the city? Absolutely. Quite frankly, it reminds me of Washington, D.C. We have two heads of the executive branch in Washington, D.C. and in this city who ran on transparency, and it's been anything but that. Now let me talk to you a little bit about what goes on with the city council. There's a law that says that you cannot form a quorum of more than 2 members of the city, more than 3 members or more of the city council to discuss things that are happening in a public meeting. The law does not say that 2 people can't. So have I ever discussed issues with members of the city council outside the city council chambers? Yes. Let me give you a perfect example so that you understand. Do we sit there and decide who's going to vote what? No, we don't. We're careful. But we had a mayor who recently posted on Facebook that Jensen Pond was extremely low. I was on vacation in Florida. I couldn't get away once in a while. I was going to be a part of the city council meeting by telephone, electronically. And my concern was that there was something going on with Jensen Pond that I didn't understand. And thankfully, I was able to call another member of city council who's very dedicated to the city and spends a lot of time looking into these issues. And we discussed the issue of what's going on with Jensen Pond. Are we actually using too much water? Or is this an anomaly? And we discussed that. We determined that it was an anomaly and called it after the meeting. So those discussions sometimes happen, but it's important to vet the information before we get there.
Thank you.
Being on the planning commission in the last recent years, I think we've got along pretty good. We had a developer come in that wanted to do some things to the city that the general plan didn't allow. And we know for a fact that over a period of months and probably in the last 2 years that there were some underhanded dealings that were going on. We witnessed some of that in the planning commission, and the fact that they sent some of their lobbyists up against us and some of their powerful attorneys. And you know, and we just said, did you read the general plan? What you want to do isn't in the general plan. So if you want to do this, you need to change the general plan, and you have to come through the planning commission. We submit it to the city council, and then they'll vote yes or no. They went after me and tried to get me thrown off the planning commission. I think there were some backdoor dealings. I was against what they were trying to do because it didn't fit the general plan. The only person that was invited to their Christmas party was the mayor.
Same question. What are your thoughts on transparency as it relates to making decisions with the city?
I think it's fundamental. You know, the city administration or the council, the mayor, they work for you. But ultimately, the citizens of Syracuse should stand up and take part in what's happening and voice their opinions, okay? I don't think it's proper for a small group of people just sit around and make decisions for everybody. Everybody needs to be involved in this process. As far as transparency goes, that was the first question. The second question was what?
For city council members and former planning.
Oh, as far as cooperating,
yeah,
backdoor cooperation. You know, I think sometimes, like under Brian's situation where he called out for someone to explain what's going on while he's out of town, you know, I think that's perfectly acceptable. As far as a few individuals having their own agenda and, you know, scheming, if you will, I don't think that's appropriate. Everybody needs to work as a team. The council needs to be one team and promote each other and create a positive environment. You know, if I have more time, I think too, you know,
15 more seconds.
okay, so I think it's very important for the council to agree to disagree, but in the end, come together and come up with a resolution that serves the citizens, not their ego.
Now, this question is just for the mayoral candidates. As planning commission chair, I attended several meetings where residents were extremely vocal and upset at applications presented to the city. This made for a very tenuous and tense is a word. Very tense.
Who was I in that statement?
Me. It was a very tense situation. Are you capable, and how would you react to a very loud and frustrated citizenry? Mr. Palmer.
Well,
Because it will happen.
it's okay.
It will happen.
Let's put it this way, I'm an insurance agent. How many of you like insurance agents? I have had people come into my office many times, upset over various different things. I've had several of my employees say, that guy was so ticked off, how did you handle that? Well, the best thing to do is be totally honest with people, tell them the facts and how it is. And generally speaking, when they look and understand how it is in the city, I mean, you can't make everybody happy in this city. It's impossible, okay? I'm one of those that has not been very happy lately. So I get up in council meetings. Steve can verify that I get up. I stand for the Second Amendment. I'm one who got up and asked for a resolution. We got the resolution. I complained about the salary increases. I was the only one that night that complained about that. So they passed it. So I think I can handle the contention in there. But at the same time, I think I can bring people together because I've had a lot of training through Dale Carnegie on human relations skills. I taught it for 9 years. I think I have the ability to work with the people and help them out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Going along his lines, I'm in the automotive industry. I've been service manager at a couple different dealerships and car lots where you just bought a car, it breaks down, who gets yelled at? The guy who sold you the car. The service manager has to deal with everything. And getting those customers to calm down and coming to an agreement of, well, let me work with my guys up front, I'll fight for you. I don't want to hear anybody, badmouth the company I'm working at, and so I got to make you guys happy. And I can basically get along with anybody. Played football for several years. I'm actually coach right now. I'm supposed to be over there, but I'm here. I've dealt with people all walks of life. I've been a corrections officer at Davis County Jail, dealing with those guys, the bad guys from Davis County, making them happy, making them not be upset with the rest of us corrections officers, and making it a good place to, sorry for them to say live there, but they have to live there. I feel like I can get along with anybody. I feel like I can calm down anybody, whether it be a mob of 72 inmates in a block, or whether it be individuals who just bought a car, or even individuals who are upset with how the city's being run.
Thank you very much. What we got here? We're doing good. Okay, after reviewing different literature on the candidates, many have taken a stance that the general plan should not be changed. At the most recent city council meeting, and I could be wrong on this because at the most recent city council meeting, the general plan was changed for a developer. Is that correct? Was changed. In fact, the general plan has changed several times over the last year or two. Interestingly, the city is also in the process of selling a piece of property at Jensen Park that required a general plan change. How often should the general plan be changed? And have you voted to change the general plan? And how do you justify that with your stance, your position? Mr. Gately. Is that a long question? A little bit too long and confusing?
No, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. That's all it is. General plan is a living document. It ought to be reviewed at least every 3 to 5 years, would be my opinion. That we ought to be looking at it, and it ought to reflect the values of the community as it is at the time it's reevaluated. Things will change. When I was a boy, there was a beet dump a mile from here. There was a garbage dump a mile in that direction, and when we built our home, there was a pig farm that was really roaming down the hill, down from where we are. None of those things would exist in Syracuse today because of the environment that we're in. The general plan is just that, a general plan in the direction it ought to go. It is not a zoning map. It is a general plan of where we want to go. And no, it ought to be pretty stiff, and it ought to be evaluated regularly, and it ought to match what's going on in the city.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pratt.
Well, as a past member now, the Planning Commission, the law stipulates that every 5 years you need to go through and reevaluate your general plan. I do agree with Mike Gailey that it does need to be changed, but it needs to be changed in a way that it doesn't separate itself from the core values of the city. In other words, you're going to have a developer come in, as happened, and requires a minor change in order to produce a piece of property, which is a ski lake, which who would ever thought that Syracuse City is going to have a ski lake? So we need to make a minor change. I championed a couple of things that when I came in, because my background is all business, I said we don't have enough business zones in here. We had general commercial and a C2 zone, which was totally unworkable. We got rid of C2 and replaced it with 3 other zones: business park, professional office, and neighborhood services. All of these are empirically over building businesses here in Syracuse. And it gives us a toolbox that is that no other city actually has around us, to be honest with you. And we spent the last 2 years really putting the right wording and things into those zones. So anybody that comes in that wants to put retail or some kind of little distribution or little manufacturing facility, or they want to do anything, even going into our neighborhoods with neighborhood services, they can take a little corner and put a little corner grocery store in there. We want business here. And what perfect time to do that is right now when interest rates are low, money's available, we got tons of land here. There's no question we don't have tons of land. We got a beautiful road. We got two new roads. We got Mayoral Drive. We got 193 in Bingville. Man, what a perfect scenario to bring business in. But does Syracuse have to change and be like every other city? I say no. But we can polish the general plan as needed.
You need me to repeat the question?
No, okay. Thanks. I'm not one for change just because there's an opportunity to change. I think that the citizens' opinion needs to be considered in the general plan. Obviously, it's not something that's written in stone. But things are going to change in our community. They have over the years. You look at our ancestors and some of the things that were here previously and how the city has changed since then. With that, I still think that we need to be very careful and cautious as we do change the general plan. We set a precedence, and if we just change it at whim, we run into issues and problems that could cause other legal problems for us. And so we want to make sure that we're very careful that we use that general plan as it's designed and take care of the city based on how our citizens feel.
Thank you. This question I was going to pose just to the mayors, but I think I want to pose this to everybody here. So start thinking about this one. Recent politicians in our state and other states have suffered severe moral lapses. Anthony Weiner in New York, San Diego Mayor Filner, and our own Utah State Attorney General John Swallow. Likewise, we've had several within our community suffer such moral lapses. Can you be trusted, and how can we know? Mr. Pratt.
Well, before I came here, I made sure I ran around and took all my wanted posters down. I'm living proof that the prison release system works. The fact is, I've got 5 kids and 25 grandchildren. I am the patriarch of my family, and to stain that position, it would be a travesty not only to them but to my wife. And I can assure you that nothing in my background or in my thought process would ever expose me to something that would be as demeaning to that, and especially as a representative of the city. I represent you. So besides my family, it would be a stain upon every citizen in the Syracuse City. So I would assure you that that would never happen. Thanks.
Yes. I will be honest. And I will never do anything that will embarrass my family or yours.
I work in an industry, the transportation industry. We're probably regulated more than the airplanes are. And so the gentleman that ran safety before I got into it looked at ways to get around the rules, to bend the rules. And when I took over, we had a very bad problem with safety. Matter of fact, we had a FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Administration, that came in and was doing audits and causing issues. The stance that I took in our company, and it was difficult because you have to change the attitude from the executives down to the janitor and make sure that they all feel the same way. And the stance that I took was to be a value-driven company, not concerned about priorities, but concerned about value, honesty, all the things that run and keep us where we're at. I have a lovely wife and children, and would never want to sacrifice that for a priority because they are one of my values, as well as this city is a value of mine, and being able to live in this community and be able to be proud to tell others where I'm from.
Thank you.
Similar to these gentlemen, my core values lie with my family and preserving the trust and respect I have with them, and to do anything that would tarnish that would just be unheard of. So, and also, you know, we live in a country where, unfortunately, you know, these things are happening and people are becoming desensitized to it. And it's very unfortunate that that is the case. But, you know, as far as my moral values go, you know, the worst thing that I'll ever be accused of is maybe sneaking out at 10 o'clock at night in my underwear to put the trash can out. That's about it.
Thank you.
My wife gave me that look. I am guilty of sneaking out to the mailbox in my underwear to put mail in. So maybe we're both guilty of the same thing. I will tell you, I think we have to be careful in answering this question too glibly. I'm my family's personal friends with Mike Crapo, a senator from Idaho, who got arrested for a DUI. He was my state president when I got home from my LDS mission, and I was very, very disappointed. Will I do anything to embarrass the city? No. Am I a man of integrity? Yes. But I would also say this, the examples that you gave us, and I'm not forgiving, I'm not telling people of Idaho to forgive Mike Crapo or not to forgive him. But what I am saying is the examples that you gave us are examples of people who have abused the laws. And so I hope we can distinguish the difference. People may be embarrassed and people may do things that are wrong. We've got to ferret out the difference between doing something wrong in our personal lives and doing something that embarrasses the city and is wrong by our office of power. So, am I going to embarrass the city? No, I don't think so. I'm doing everything I can to be honest. I'm doing everything I can to be straightforward. But I'd also say, with that caveat, let's be careful. And let's be a little bit understanding of people that make mistakes, because I've seen it personally happen to a friend of mine who's a very good man. And we need to be careful that we don't judge people too harshly as well. But I will protect my office, and I will be careful with my integrity.
You forgot about the mayor of Syracuse City.
Oh. So there's a whole bunch, and I didn't necessarily want to go into names.
So just to mention a few, that if you were to talk to my tax person, he would tell you that I show up there with interest income from each one of my children, who I've loaned money to, and I charge them interest. And the government would never know about that, but I give it to him, and I claim it. I would say that that would be my biggest purpose, is to come into this office with the desire to be 100% honest in my dealings. I believe that I think I'm the candidate from the citizens. I have found that the monies that people have donated to me, a lot of them have been people calling and just saying, hey, you know, we want somebody in there that is honest and will treat our money in the city the same way you treat your own money. That's what I would do.
Thank you.
Like my slogan says, principles over politics. You have to have principles. Some of the jobs I've held, being a corrections officer, they have to do an extensive background check on you to make sure that you're a good guy who's going to hold up this, being a deputy, being a police officer, and sort of representing the people, the county you work for. My wife owns a daycare, and to run a daycare, you have to have a background check. I have a concealed carry permit. You have to have a background check. All these things I've passed flawlessly. My wife runs a beautiful daycare that's just flourishing. I don't know how I could be mayor and do backdoor deals or whatever and tarnish her business. She has so many kids she watches over, so many kids that we have so much influence over, and I couldn't stand to be a person who would ever tarnish her business, tarnish the kids who come to our house every single day. I'm sure that we have some of the kids in our neighborhood come to us, and I couldn't stand it.
Thank you. It's a two-part question, but it's just a yes and no. So that's the way we're going to limit answers, is yes and no. The question is, have you accepted donations from any have you accepted donations from anybody that has an application before the city or does business with the city? Or have you accepted any large donations from citizens who are currently protesting applications with the city?
No.
Two questions.
No.
No.
Well, kind of.
Pending.
No on both counts.
I'm self-funded.
Brian, do you want to explain?
I do want to explain. I will tell you, and this is a problem, I received campaign contributions from somebody who is planning on putting an application before the city council. So yes, I have, but I will recuse myself if necessary. So, but it's a private citizen as well. It's not a major developer. But I'm very aware of the fact that I received campaign contributions, and I'm very aware of the fact that that may be a conflict. Not all the votes that if
So,
necessary.
thank you. Travis, you want to clarify?
I'm self-funded, but I've had offers from certain individuals. I'm not sure if they are doing business with the city, and I'd have to look into it further.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question. Or should we just do the
You were going to read some of Doug's responses, so I was interested in
Oh,
those.
yeah. No,
Yeah, that's-
I forgot about that. I'll do that real quickly. And then
That was my same.
I don't mind, I'll just get this email on my phone. I just got going and forgot.
His response to that question.
Okay, I'll read them.
I can answer it for you. Yes, I have. In the first meet the candidates, he already said he did.
Let's let him answer this question.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And then you guys can make the decision.
May I comment that I like your tie?
I'll show that in my life. Braxton, did we do that question to him? Or was that before we?
I don't know. You did that with him.
You might have sent that. I apologize, I don't think I did. That was on the revised list of questions. But let me read his question here. The question was, what are your thoughts on transparency as it relates to making decisions with the city council? City council members, have you corroborated or had discussions with, or made pacts with other members offline? His answer was, all decisions and discussions should be taking place in a city council meeting. I can honestly say that I have never discussed an upcoming agenda item with another council member or mayor prior to the meeting. I've had a few call me, to which my response always has been, quote, I'd rather have this discussion in a meeting. Another response that he had to the question regarding staffing levels of the city and the recent hiring of the city, his comment was, the number of city employees currently is actually lower than what it was 5 or 6 years ago. New positions that have been hired, i.e. the attorney and engineer, have been much needed as our city continues to grow. This year alone, we will save close to $1 million by having in-house services versus what it would cost to contract those needs to outside companies. Our employees are our best asset. If we hire top-notch, educated, efficient people, more and better work gets done, and the city is better. So there are two examples of his responses. Unfortunately, I failed to ask that question to him. That was on the second division. Yes.
Before we continue with those, were these candidates given the list of questions beforehand to prepare responses, or was this just afforded to one particular?
No, this was for those candidates that I didn't know that were going to be here, so they could have that.
The opportunity to prepare responses.
I think Travis had it beforehand. I think I sent it to you today at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So we tried to make this as fair as possible.
So you cheated.
No. We Jackson can attest to this. We tried very hard to make sure this was well. Now, hopefully you've all thought of another question. Yes, Mr.
May I make a statement I think that needs to be there since we're talking about fairness and transparency?
Mm-hmm.
I was at the meeting that we talked about where it was disclosed, where he disclosed that he had received some funding from a realtor that was later discovered to have some kind of tie with Ninegret.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I would be representing that fairly to him, that he wasn't aware that there was a tie there. That's what was, I mean.
Hey, let's not, I don't want to discuss what he knows and doesn't.
What I'm stating is what I perceive, not what others perceive. I perceived that he was open and frank with that, and he was a little surprised that there was a tie there, and that into it. What he did after that, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
But I think it ought to be in the record. It ought to say that we don't know what he's done since that with that funding.
I think that would be fair, and I don't want to. I apologize, Ron. I don't want to.
I think a counter response is only appropriate.
No, unfortunately, I think that would have to come from him, I think. We don't need to discuss. I think that's fair. At the beginning, I asked you to think of a question you'd ask another candidate. Hopefully you thought about that. We'll start with you, Mr. Jackson.
Is it for everybody or just one particular person or?
One particular person.
All right. When it comes to our sewer going up, there was a vote for a $6 raise, but it would happen over the next several years. As being voted to the council, what would you do to either repeal that vote or enlighten the citizens? Because I'm pretty sure the citizens don't know about it. Let's go to Mr. Travis.
Travis Waller?
Yes, I'm the other Travis, so the other Travis.
You know, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I think that, you know, it'd be prudent to evaluate that and see if increases are just in maintaining the infrastructure. You know, that's my best answer.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Palmer.
Along that same line, this is for Mr. Daly. Actually, it was $9.40 is what was recommended as an increase on our utility bills. I computed that to be about $780,000 coming into the city, and its purpose was for infrastructure. Where now, we are currently using our road funds to pay for the infrastructure on that there. How would you vote on that $9.40 increase?
I really believe that each generation has a debt that it needs to pay ahead to pay forward to other generations. We benefit in this city from the founding, not the founding fathers, but the fathers who were there at the time with secondary water. There are a lot of things that we as this generation benefit because of some planning that went on before. I believe utilities ought to be self-funding. I think that that is an expense that we in this generation should, I don't think we should rob Peter to pay Paul. I think those accounts ought to pay their way. I don't think that it should come from a rainy day fund. I don't think it should come from a general fund. I do think that infrastructure is our #1 issue outside of how we work together as a team. So, you know, I was in a city council meeting where this was discussed. The thing that I felt a little bad about is that we had a city staffer who did nothing but research and study that. And at the end of the day, it was almost to him like, well, we know better than you. You've studied this. Yeah, but we are going to do something different. I think that we maybe ought to look a little careful. We hired this fellow to tell us what we need to do. Those principles intact. It ought to be self-funding. We should not be putting any kind of a burden on future generations for utilities. We ought to be providing for utilities in the future by how we pay for them now. How we pay for them now.
Thank you very much.
I guess this question would be for Mike Daly. You talked about a need to review the general plan on a regular basis, and I know there's a lot about that. My question is as you review the general plan and you make changes, are you talking about changes to specific areas of the general plan in terms of mapping, or are you talking about making changes to the wording and the preamble of the general plan? Do you get the difference? I mean, I don't mean to insult you, but do you understand my question?
I've not read the preamble. I will. If there's a preamble to it, I will.
It basically says, this is what we want Syracuse to be, here's how we're going to zone, here's how we're going to plan. So as we go through the individual districts of the city, those changes in those individual districts have to match the preamble and the wording of the general plan as it flavors and plans the city.
Well, I don't think that anybody has a crystal ball, and I don't think that anybody knows what's going to be out there 5, 10, 15 years from now. You know, if you'd have asked me how important was a beat dump when I was 12, very important. It was my playground. It's exactly what I wanted as a boy, and it's what I loved to play on. It was wonderful. How important was a city dump when I was 15? very important. It was the only place we could put waste in those days. So what I'm saying is it needs to be a living document that we can live with, and it ought to reflect the current values of the citizens of Syracuse. And if something were to happen, I think one of the things that we're not taking great advantages of is we ought to be the gateway to Antelope Island. We are losing money from people that go out there and come back. I was out there about a month ago, and I was interested in that if you had a license plate that didn't have a Utah in it, your talk about Antelope Island was wonderful. It was great. It was fun. It was. But if you came from South Jordan, well, I hate Brian Flag. We need to become the gateway to Antelope, and we need to promote that. That's something that sets us apart. We don't have anybody to the west of the island. We need to promote it. So in that promotion, if we have to change our master plan in some way, we ought to look at that. It's a revenue stream that we're not taking advantage of. Yes, I think it's a living plan. It ought to be evaluated. There ought to be citizen input on that. It ought to be regularly evaluated to make sure it's meeting our values.
Thank you very much. Travis Waller.
Terry, you seem like you're a guy who has soft skills. So I guess my question is, what would you do to build teamwork and collaboration amongst the city staff, the council, and the mayor, should you be elected?
Good question. I think the number 17 skill from Dale Carnegie says, look at things from the other person's point of view. I think I have the ability to look at things from Mike Gage's point of view or Travis Waller's point of view. I would be able to look at Gary Pratt's point of view and even Alan Lowry. I do believe that I would be able to work with a Brian Duncan and a Carrie Ann Lisenby. Now, I've heard a lot of people out there said, can you get along with Carrie Ann? You bet I can. I can get along with her. But the most important thing that I would be able to bring to the table is the fact that if I lose in a debate and so forth, and they decide to vote against what I believe in, I can walk away from it. I've lost in the past. I can lose in the future. So what's important to me is that I want to represent the citizens and do the best job that I can. I think I could bring stability back.
Thank you.
I'd actually like to defer my question to the people. There's a lady here before that had that question.
Oh, Ben. This is about the utility rates. I just find it interesting because I just got my utility bill today with the rate increase, and called my daughter and I said, tell me how much you're paying for utilities. She lives on Lemon Hollow. $60 a month, folks. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of wondering why our utilities are up here when other people are down here and are having a lot more to show for it.
Would you like to ask the particular member?
Can I bring a good point into that? I lived in Layton and our secondary water was $60 on our property taxes.
I like that idea because you can deduct it on your taxes.
It's not going to get older.
Does anyone?
I'm on the council and I can shed a little bit of light to that. First of all, the only utility rates that were raised by the North Davis Sewer District. And because we have a contract with the North Davis Sewer District, it's not, by law, we have to basically vote on that, but to vote against the North Davis Sewer District's implementation creates all sorts of legal problems and legal issues. And so we really had to kind of do that. But let me tell you, that's the only increase that we had in the city. I led the charge. We did a 55-cent reduction in garbage can, and we did a 55-cent increase in stormwater to balance those out. The proposal to the city council was to raise rates as high as $9.60 per household. It was plus the $1.50 for the sewer district. We raised the $1.50 because we have a contractual obligation with the North Davis Sewer District. I led the charge, and by a 3-2 vote, the city council actually did not raise utilities in the city. With that said, I will say that utilities do need to keep up with their costs. I propose by offsetting that and saying, if you want to raise utilities, let's take a look at where we can save other places in the city, so that we can increase our utility rates, but lower our taxes other places, so the citizens don't have to come out of pocket with a net increase in their taxes. That idea was shot down. There was absolutely no way that the mayor and at least one of the members of the city council were adamantly opposed to decreasing taxes anywhere else. And so with that, I led the charge, and I was supported by 2 other conservative members of the city council to plain and simply amend the proposal of $9.60 and do a 55-cent offset against a 55-cent offset and shoot down the $9.60 proposal, because there was no proposal to the contrary to reduce your taxes somewhere else. So we did, as a city council, did not raise your utility rate, and we are concerned about that, and we're not going to do it until we get a compromise and offset in our taxes somewhere else.
Thank you. Does someone else want to answer that question?
As a businessman, when you run a business, you've got a copy machine over here. That copy machine doesn't last forever. So you have to put a retained earnings account and an asset management against that copy machine. And you amortize that out over however many years you think that copy machine is going to live before you have to unplug it and throw it out the window. And so the idea here is to maintain our infrastructure, is to put some kind of formula of depreciation against our assets, which is our infrastructure, and decide, is the formula we're using adequate to cover the replacement costs of our infrastructure? I would say to the citizenry and to the city council, if I was on there, is let's look at that formula first. Maybe that formula is a little too robust for our infrastructure. Now, having said that, our infrastructure has been ignored for a lot of years by many administrations. And until this past year, when a lot of money flowed in and we did a boatload of roads and pipes and things like that, this is probably the first year we've seen a lot of orange cones in the city. So that isn't going to catch us up. Our finance director tells us all the time, he says, no matter how much we spend today, it's never going to catch us up unless we change our rates and put some money against future costs to replace the infrastructure that we've ignored for all these years monetarily, and also as a mechanical replacement of these things. We've ignored both, the financial side of it and the replacement venue of it. So it's a tough decision coming down the road to this city council, and those are the 2 points, is somewhere we're going to have to pay the piper. We're going to have to raise rates to compensate for the replacement. And it's the same for you. If the tires on your car wear out, where's that money coming from if you haven't set money aside? When the 30,000 miles rolls around and those tires are bald, where are you going to get your money?
But as an individual, how do you know that the city's going to up their taxes or up their pocket? You're living from day to day,
That's right.
trying to manage your own money,
I'll
and then take it.
answer that one. It's who you vote for. That's how you know.
Yeah, vote for.
So with that, Mr. Gailey, you mind asking, would you like to ask someone a question? They've asked you a lot of questions. So I don't know if you want to.
The real question I have is, I wonder how Alan raised his
I'm married up.
Unfair, married up.
That's right.
I have a question that I'd like to ask Alan and hear his response to this. The word compromise comes from a Latin root, com meaning community, and promise is a part of compromise. It's part of the spelling of the word. So if you look at it, it means coming to common ground and individuals making promises among themselves that will bind them together. Now, if there is no reason for compromise, if we're already on common ground, then we don't need to come anywhere. So I'd ask Alan what he would propose in helping us come to common ground.
The most important thing, I think, is listening. Even though we're on common ground, we still have differences, and there's still things that need to be talked about. And transparency in government, we have far too many. I even have to answer that question, so I'll answer it now. We have far too many closed-door meetings, and regardless if we are on common ground or not, when there's a closed-door meeting that happens, you always think there's some kind of backroom deal that's going on that you're not aware of. And so by making things transparent so that everybody has a voice, everybody has an opportunity to be able to put their input and give what they think is important forward, makes us to be able to come and be able to utilize that common ground. I truly believe that the government is here for the people, not the government is there for the people are there for the government. I think that it's important that we understand that in an organization chart, people are the ones that are in charge of the city. We're here to serve you, and that's how I think that making sure that that confidence works. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alan. Gary, you want to finish this off?
Having worked inside the city as a volunteer in the planning commission, I'll pose this to Alan, because he seems like a fair-minded guy. He doesn't get his feathers ruffled too much. When your name's put in the local media and in social media, and things are said that are untrue about you and your positions, and about you personally and your beliefs, and they personally attack you and your family, how do you address that?
You know, it's a very good question. I had an opportunity to take my niece away from my sister. That sounds kind of harsh, but she wasn't doing the things that she needed to do. The judge took us in under the false pretenses that we needed to take her for 30 days while there was a cleanup period of the divorce that was going on. In the process of that, my own sister went from attacking her ex-husband to attacking me. Called the governor and said that I was a child abuser and that I did drugs and all kinds of things which could have threatened my employment because being regulated by the Federal Motor Carrier Administration, we have to have a drug-free environment. There's all kinds of things that we have to go through. And so it was a very difficult time for us. A lot of forgiveness needs to be done there, and I think that's part of the problem that we have with the city right now. Because there's too many people that are letting their feathers get ruffled, taking offense to things that they shouldn't be, not being able to lose and compromise and do the things that need to be done. And so, you know, sometimes you have to take those insults, you have to deal with them, and then forgive and move forward and work together as a team to try and accomplish the goals of the city and the goals of the citizens.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for coming here. I want to thank especially the candidates, not only for running, for spending time here. You guys did fantastic. One thing I learned is I served in the planning commission, both as just a commissioner and then as a chair. And something that's been talked about here is I lost many arguments. Sometimes you need to know how to exit the stage left, and you need to do it gracefully. That being said, I wish all you guys the best of luck. I hope you guys win, and please join with me in thanking
I just have a quick question. Not that I want to spend all night here, but we're at 7:15. I'm wondering, and I don't want to ruffle your feathers either, whether if people are interested, they want to ask some questions.
Well, let's do this.
Yes, I've got a question.
Let me defer to Braxton. He knows more than I do. Should we just let the audience mingle with them after the meeting, or do you want to open up to a few questions? I just don't want to.
That's good. Why don't we open up to 5 questions, and then we'll mingle after that.
What if we go 3 questions? Is that okay?
How about 4?
Obviously, he does not like losing.
And please, specific.
I have a comment. Since she's not a citizen of Syracuse, she said she lives in Layton.
No, I used to live here.
Oh, okay, that's fine, as long
No,
as
I've
she's
been
in
here
here.
for
She's, I
7
thought she
years.
said she lived in
So,
Layton.
okay. Please.
Okay, my
Is it to an individual or everyone?
Everyone.
Okay, please be curt with your responses.
My concern is the interest the city is paying on those bonds. We're paying a monthly or yearly premium of $805,000, and the interest is $435,000. What are you guys going to do about that? I have submitted some proposals that I think that we need as a community to go together and do something about this debt. We're paying over $1 million a year in back payments and interest. And that would sure go a long ways if we had that cleared off our books.
Thank you very much. Great question. We'll start with Gary. I'm going to add to that and some of our long-term debt, not just bonds, because I think there's some other notes.
Yeah, there's some other obligations. Our total obligations with interest is over $20 million.
And be specific in your answers.
Yeah, in the
Try to be very specific.
last budget period, The finance director went and renegotiated these bonds to the lowest interest rate, even lower than our sister cities. So we've got our interest rate as low as we possibly can. Now, we're obligated to those bonds. We're sitting in one right now. The fire station, the city building, and other things that we've obligated ourselves to. The fact remains is how do we get out of that debt? And I've suggested some ways of doing that. And one way is to outsource some of our departments. Some of our departments only have one person sitting in a chair. We can outsource those and have better results and the city wouldn't suffer from having those outsourced. And in one case where the recreation department would be outsourced, it would actually increase the income from our recreation department by threefold. The city's taking in plenty of money. They paid a $150,000 bonus out. Our rainy day fund went from 5% to 20%, which is the highest that you legally can have. And so there's money to be had to pay these bonds down. And as a councilman, I'd like to see as much of that money. We need to have our employees paid right, but I think if we have excess money, we can pay those bonds down. And we have one bond coming up that represents in the next few years $1 million that is going to relieve us. So I think there's a lot.
Thank you very much. So you would pay them off early.
Yes.
Let's shorten the question. Would you pay off our long-term debt early, or would you keep going with the money?
I'd pay it off early and learn from the past.
Alan,
I'd pay it off early as well.
how would you guys, do you guys have specific ideas on how you guys would do it?
Efficiencies, looking through for efficiencies within the company.
Mike, do you have any ideas?
The greatest revenue source in this community is its businesses.
Okay.
And so I would encourage residents to support local businesses.
Travis?
I would pay it off early, but I'd like to add that we're currently paying for something now that if we purchased 10 years from now would cost 10 times as much, possibly. So, you know, I think, I'm not for bonding, don't get me wrong, but I'm grateful that we have the infrastructure, the buildings that we have.
Brian?
Well, you've got to find a balance here, because we have a real infrastructure problem in this city, and as our roads deteriorate and we fail to work on them, the increased cost of replacing our infrastructure goes up dramatically. The difference between fixing cracks in a road and redoing the road are extremely expensive. And so I think we need to find a balance. I'd love to pay off those bonds early, but I also think that as we come up with extra money, we got to be careful instead of just throwing it all at our debt, which we've got to pay off. I absolutely agree with everybody else on this panel. We've also got to realize if we throw extra money towards debt, we're allowing our infrastructure to go in disrepair. It will cost us more money to replace that infrastructure than the interest on our debt. So we have to balance that approach.
Very good, thank you. Terry?
So the most important part would be to keep our rainy day fund. We need to maintain that 20% to 25%. Over and above that, I would just soon pay those debts off.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson?
Going along with Mr. Duncan, I would love to pay it off early if we can, but I don't want to neglect anything else in the city that needs to be done. Honestly, I don't think we needed Taj Syracuse that we built over there. We didn't need this big old rec center. If we needed a basketball place, we have Syracuse High, we have Syracuse Junior High. They have basketball courts. We didn't need these buildings. We didn't need this debt.
I
But
would
we
like to
haven't.
propose to you
But we haven't.
that we do extra things outside of the city budget to aim at paying off that debt. For instance, let's have some dances on Friday nights or Saturday nights for our
I love
youth
it.
and for our, and put that money toward it.
Start tonight.
There's a lot of things that we could be doing. We could be doing a lot of things outside and make it a monthly effort to put that
Community
money.
community.
A community effort to pay off the debt.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Yes?
What do you think are acceptable uses for the rainy day fund?
Specific, very specific. No, no.
1 minute.
1 minute, let's go.
About 10 seconds.
Okay, start there.
Travis is fast.
I'm fast, okay.
Specific.
It's hard to say, well, we could use it for this. That's why it's a rainy day fund. It's what we need it for at that moment. Whether it be, if we have a water main just blow up in the middle of the road, we could use it for that.
Very good, that's great.
I would go with roads.
Roads.
Well, I think it's emergencies, and I think it's a rainy day fund can only go to 25% under Utah law. And so as we approach that, I want to keep it fairly high, but as we approach that, it's infrastructure and possibly paying down debt.
I would say infrastructure, then also if there's the economy experiences a downturn, we have some money to make up the difference.
Alan?
The structure first, but as well, if there's a downturn in the revenue for the city, it gives us an opportunity to build a plan, utilize that to plan to identify what we're going to do to accommodate that downturn.
Unforeseen infrastructure issues that could have been planned for.
Gary?
Well, that's the obvious question and answer to the question, but to be more specific, I think if we looked at our recreation department, we could improve our parks. They're underdeveloped for a robust recreation department for our children. And that in and by itself will create revenue. When it's been outsourced in California, Oregon, Nevada, and some other states have outsourced their rec programs, their income revenue to the city is tripled, quadrupled, and it's run professionally, and there wasn't one program that not one of our children couldn't participate in. We don't have that right now, but our parks will not sustain that. I think if you wanted to go out and take a little bit of that rainy day fund when it gets to the point where we can use some of that funds, put it in parks and our rec program.
Thank you very much. We have a dance starting here shortly, so we got one more question. Ray, last question.
Yes or no answer. Would you support another $9 million tax incentive to attract businesses to Syracuse?
Let's start over here. No, let's start with Gary. Yes or no?
No.
Mike? Alan? Travis?
I already voted no.
No.
Nada.
Okay.
Hey.
Thank you very much, guys. Please spend time with them, get to know them. Thank them for coming. So.
Thank you to the moderators.
I apparently am a quick guy.
Where were the